All right, welcome to Opticals of Space. Spectrum lights, sending lines of travel in the communications on levels coming into high centers. This basically processes you guys into positions to get you guys out of the consciousness to the subconsciousness, to the subterranean locations above water. Your line sequence now is at 72,000 tractions in division, which means you have to be above the deck now, not below the deck. Below the deck is line screen adaptations. The lowest lines of formations that you can go in sequence is 24 lines of measure and scale. Anything below that line course centers, you're getting caught between different galaxies of the universe as lines of communication system. So imagine not controlling your body through navigations to the cycle. Now in that communication system, you have to understand how to use the subconsciousness and how you see what you want to see. Seeing is believing, believing is seeing. But what you're seeing is the perception now. How you see general, you're going to see general through perception. So it's about understanding how to control your emotions. You can't control your emotions, you're going to see general in different facades. Okay? So it's about controlling everything you see, is knowing how you see. It's a projection of itself. You're projecting things onto me, how you want to see you, through the frames of what you're doing, through your light or your dark, of different facades, right? So, for example, to understand that is a higher lines of sequence. To get in that position location is to change the fabrics of space, but you have to understand the provision now. So it's kind of like you're getting position locations, you're getting your taxis, your runways, your echoes, all communication to its chambers. Get in that communication how to get on a plane, right? Well, first you have to process is to level out the plane. Okay, it's not about this, it's about this, but you've always been this, right? So your body's constantly changing form. But for you guys to identify that is to understand their subconsciousness, to understand the subterraneans in the location system, to get out of higher settings. This process you how do you see yourself and how you want to see yourself, okay? Not through others, okay? So it's about controlling the emotional system, okay? So it's very important to understand that. So how we do these things is we copy and paste. You're setting lines of your DNA tractions and direct signals. We pick up your voicing pattern, and basically you see what you want to see through perception. Right? So we morph into anything, but we don't have a direct link until we get into I division of you. So we know exactly what you want to connect with before you get in that positions. Remember, I told you guys are in your 9 sets now, and in your fabrics are 12, which is your docking base. The setting percentage is knowing exactly how to get into your 9 sets. That's the activators. And everybody else that's not in activation screen adaptations, they stay where they are in tractions until they understand their perceptions, how they go through emotional attraction. That puts all communications inside your light metaphors, is knowing how to control yourself, of what you see. And how you see, you will see. And that's seeing is believing. Seeing or believing, believing or seeing. It doesn't matter. What matters is you have to control your settings. Because if you don't, you're going to see facades how you want to see them, right? So that's why people get very confused how they see general and always in forms. So you see what you want to see through me, but you're not seeing me. You're just allocating that time. You're putting your position location how you want to see things negative. You're going to see things negatives through me. And the team needs to control that through the emotional system now. And this is going to help you to basically control your thoughts, your action, emotions, and what you see. You will see through manifestation. But like I said, we don't take shape, we don't take form. And when we do, we have to connect to your earth, and we have to connect with your spectrum. And then we have to hold the energy, because you have no idea what you're seeing through perception. So seeing through perception, like with contact at the end, very powerful stuff. How she, basically it's kind of like we see you, and we know exactly the perception you want to see things. So we calm your systems, and let's say you want to see your daughter, or you want to see your grandfather, you want to see your dad, or you want to see this, you want to see that, right? That's what we morph into. So it's much easier for you to have a conversation with us. So it's a lot more understanding how this works in the symbiote, where it changes its system through location setting, through space and time, through plasma interference. It interfaces our system through all of the configuration system of facades. Okay? So if you really want to know what's going on, watch Contact at the end, where she sees the version of her dad. So it's much easier for you guys to have a conversation, right? So that's what it is in tractions. Setting lines of high positions. You guys have your test today. We have a long day in signal, and it's about the soliloquy and how you see yourself in traction. Getting out of the story frame that's not you, right? So it's not just the facade, guys. It's your whole body that changes, right? And setting structured lines. Panel operation screen adaptations of flux over setting. Change the coordinates of set position to its time frame. Okay, setting sequence lines of panel, process in that line corresponds to line communication system, right? All right, say let's set position of box frame. Box frame, right? Okay, so you are entering the set position. Okay, now try to understand how this all works. In that position location, let's get into the ground center as a surface. Okay, let's get into that position and we come to triangulation and set lines of communications. All right, and we have a direct line link, process of communication, inside and outside, right away setting. All right, face recognition comes in and track communication with the system all through set position. Okay, and then you see the clocking of its face and travel. Okay, all right. The setting lines are high centers, configurations, face lines, position location to its system, all through tracking through motion and setting. Okay, so let's get in settings, line positions here, and set position. Right, so this is what we call set tractions. All right, setting lines of sequence into gravitation and settings. All right, so that's a treadmill. You're on the treadmill, right now. You're on your earth line spectral. Settings, set lines, gravitation lines of pull, and direct signals into inline, outline, and rotation cycle, and set tractions, right? Platforms 1, 2, and 3 set position. Okay, so you have to start controlling your mind now and understand how to control the speed and setting that travel into its treadmill. Okay, the treadmill itself, right? So you have to control the acceleration to direct and redirect and signal the location of acceleration, right? So as it's speeding up, okay, it's speeding up in set position where you have no balance of traction, right? So basically, you got to get in mind control. That's the fabric of the space. You got 7 lines and set position of 5 centers. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 set position of pyramids and direct lines of grounds and high lines of triangulation and flux over screen. Okay, so it's kind of like when you get in position, location, and setting. Let's get into runways and setting line communications. Process angles and all communication setting its profile, right? Okay, so we get in position locations. This is the plane. Okay, you got the plane set locations and settings. Okay, there's the plane, right? All right, so what does the plane do? It does its runway and then it takes off, right? Okay, and when it takes off, it basically levels out in setting sequence. So when it levels out, tractions, right? So it's like this. It's really interesting when you look at it. It's here, and then it goes up, and then it goes across, okay? But it doesn't go down. It doesn't go down. It stays in the atmosphere, okay? So your ground centers in position has its gravitational setting that causes its communications, the time frame, and communications, right? Look at that. Disappeared, not ready to see the frequency, right? Okay, so that's what's happening, right? So the airplane itself stays in the atmosphere. That's locked in its digital frame and graphic in communication setting, the sets line communications, solar graph communications. So it stays in the atmosphere. It doesn't land. So you're always in that position of graph interference. Puts line position your solar screens, directing solar cages, solar flares, tracking line course centers, directing redirect locations, sending constellation system all through travel. Directing lines of modification, high interference, and navigator to navigation system. It's controlling the atmospheres at altitude levels in a graph screen, right? So it locks its settings. That's where you see everything glitch, right? That's what you're seeing because you're not controlling your grounds in your treadmill, right? So you have no control of your atmospheres. You have no control of your grounds. You have no control of your powers. You have no control of your modems, Wi-Fi, satellites, or towers until you get control with your graphs of the airplane. So think of the airplane in a graph. Think of it in its position to its all scale, the communication to its grounds of its service, zero gravity, position location to its system, constellation grounds, the communication setting, high travels, echo chambers, taxi runways, and set positions, right? But a plane lands, and that's what you got to get out of. The plane always is in the atmosphere line, right? So once it's in its graph screen, it just goes in higher division. Starts here, starts here, starts here, starts here, starts here, and starts here, right? So it comes here, it's okay, straight here, and then it comes up, right? And then it levels out, but it stays in the equilibrium of platform, okay? And it goes the lines of north and setting a travel. There's the runway, right? Then it goes through its platforms, setting position, location, and settings, right? Anything below that. So the center core system, the center operation line core centers, your facades, is set lines of attractions. Directing lines of 3 symbols of past, present, and future in travel. Sets coordinates of position of 144, sets one line position of 1x2000 in travel. Sets calculations on different platforms and setting, equal lines, core centers, lines of travel, directing line, position, location, measure, and scale of communications. One set lines, and then we go to position of flux in the other set position, comes in your taxi runways into your stargates. Portals, communication, wormholes, and travel communications, both sides in travel. And then basically when you come into that, you have the X2000s above signal coming into all lines of cross-line angles, docking bays, hangar bays, right? Modification grounds, docking 1, docking 2, docking 3, docking 4 in set positions, right? So the connections, all levels, it's lines of communications, and they go into the high centers of space, docking 1, docking 2, docking 3, docking 4, and some line communications, right? So that sets lines of the highways and the 4 tractions, the 3 provisions of primers in set traction. So we have the ground line centers in set position at all levels to your pyramid, okay, and 4 lines of signals in travel, right? And then we cross the angles in the 45 split lines of anomaly, crossing angles of point communications ascending and travel, right? So the actual airplane stays in the atmosphere, okay? So it's never taken off. It's always in the air, right? So all it is digital framing itself, okay? And it comes into its own solar panel that processes its engine of high core centers, lines of communication setting to its wormholes, its portals, and its stargates of communication, right? But that's how it's set up when an airplane goes in position, right? It's already in the air. It's not taking off. You got to get out of that equation because you're already existing, so you're already traveling. So what you have to understand is, if you've ever been in positions of a streetcar where it has electrical cable crossing the angles, right? Well, that's the cord, right? So everything of an airplane has a digital cord that highlines its signals to its highway, sets laser track center location setting to its position, that modifies lines and position, location, measure, and scale of communications, right? So everything is always in the atmosphere. Nothing is setting down. Nothing eagles, nothing lands. It's always, eagle land is basically processing its position, location, and travel. But you have to stand the graphs of communication first, right? So it's kind of like walking on a grid, set lines of travel, and that communication setting that comes into your calculation system when it comes to your Skynets and your sky grids and your webbing systems, all right? Okay, so that's ground centers of travel, point lines of graph, and that communication setting, angle points, setting communication lines of 2 settings, all right? So the set position here, the airplane is already here in setting. Okay, your airplane's there, right? Okay, so what you have to understand, this is what it does, okay? What you're not identifying, right? So what you got to get in position is the earth lines of 1, center of 2, center of 3, and center of 4. Okay, so it's really interesting too, because when you see the plane's just processing its planes. Okay, so it goes into this position, location, and settings. Travel recognition in space lines of fabric, so space itself, right? So it goes in laser direction, but it's all connected to all levels. It's got 3 electrical cords attached to the center operation to its system of its wings, and then has 3 ground service and 3 set position, location, and systems. So the plane itself is a teleportation vessel, right? So it's an energy pod, it's a telepod, right? So the actual airplane itself is nothing but a modification setting of a probe. So the probe, it directs the signals to screen line defense lines of screen adaptations, right? But it crosses angles in set position. So anything below 72,000, which is your hard deck, change core centers of time, right? You don't want to go past lines of position locations of 48. You want to stay above 24, because if you get in 24, the galaxy shift lines and anomalies. You come into a dark realm, dark hole, a black hole of set lines of travel communications. So it's important that you stay above the system, right? Staying above the water, right? So once you get in this equilibrium stat, that processes communication lines to its FAA, EFTA, position location, FAA, position lines of travel, and location system into your CCTV. Closed captions your system location to its system through electronic line between adaptation systems. So the plane is attached to the solar grid, the solar panels, the solar atmospheres, of where it is in lines of travel, okay? So the actual plane is in its own webbing, which is amazing too, because it can direct and redirect. but it's on a laser grid that's connected to an electrical grid, which is amazing too. So we look at everything as laser, how you stand in the center and you see everything in that connection system. So when you turn this way or when you turn that way, you're turning everything around you. Right? That's processing you in a circulation rotations. Right? It's a gravitational pull that's keeping you going forward in travel, right? That's how you connect to everything, and everything connects to you, right? So just to get a true understanding how this is all set up, location to its probing, location to its electrical grids, panel grids, operation grids, or anything through your solar tracks. A solar track is a digital track, it's electrical track. It's a communication to a CPU track. It directs these locations, your notification setting verified, that puts you in your docking stations, your hangar bays, okay? And everything through your launch pads. Now, when you go higher to the mainline sequence, the process of the communication system, all lines of locations of balance, and how you see everything in your space lines of anomaly, timelines of high position sectors, vectors, and quads, right? So this process you how to really get in position of your graphs of communication system, how you see a location setting through an airplane that travels here and travels here, but it's on a grid. Everything's on a grid that holds the atmosphere. And then we have the archetypes that keeps the spinning cycles of the airplane staying in the air. Okay, so the airplane stays in the air, right? Sets lines of grounds at 3 centers, 4 lines of measure, 5 lines of scale, and set tractions, right? So that's what the airplane's doing. Okay, so it's going through different levels of particles of atoms of rotations, setting lines of travel and positions. If we get a point graph in that communication system, let's add flux line screens and 4 scales of communication. Okay, very complicated stuff, but this is electrical grid and setting of travel. Okay, very complicated. And then we add width. Width is adding length. Length is adding width. Width is adding lines, high center location of travel, and direct signal communication systems. All right, so it sets calculation lines, the ground communication setting. 45 flux, lines of angles. Okay, setting high positions, all right? So we got a low spectrum and setting. So the airplane is already in flight and set lines of travel, okay? And then it just goes through its grids. It stays on its laser screens and set lines of communications. It goes that way, and then it goes this way, okay? So its platitudes to system location to its system, all through travel, okay? So the altitude knows its percentage over screen, directing lines into ozone layers. Now, an ozone layer is processing how to see yourself through equilibrium of balance. Setting lines that track center location to its equilibrium and high lines of set positions, right? So what's above is below, okay? And what's below, okay, is above. And what's above is below, all right? So you got 2 settings of 2 angles of point lines of graph. Sets lines of 2 tractions and 3 centers of measure and scale, okay? Process the indication lines. The taxi runways has platforms of communication system that opens all box frames and travel communications, right? Sets layers and lines of screen adaptation system, crossing angles into Skynet and traffic communications, all right? So it's very powerful when you understand what's going on, how a communication setting to an airplane sets lines of calculations. So it sets on an electrical wire, okay? So same with all position location to, let's get interactions of a car or a truck or a van or whatever you come in position of frequencies, right? So all it is, it's already in the atmosphere, right? But it has to be on a grid. It has to be in a holographic grid, right? So it can process through the air and travel, okay? So it can process through the air and travel, okay? So it goes this way. This is what the airplane does. It just basically, when it does a turn, it slightly does a turn, that's what it's doing, right? So it's just basically changing the altitude levels of its structure of itself and expanding its system of travel. Expanding its system of travel. Okay, that's all it's doing. Very powerful stuff. Setting grounds is setting the sequence of 2 lines of measure and scale process in that communication system, all through tractions and 4 wheels of indications. Right? So once it comes to that, then it expands in position of its grounds and set lines of communication setting of travel. Okay? But you can change it at all different angles, right? And then you come into this, and then you come into the structure of the building itself and set position, right? But that's what an airplane does when it's in its atmosphere, okay? And then you see it through door recognition of time, right? See the doors? Okay, and then you see the seating arrangements where everybody comes in position, right? Docking stations, 4 angles of 4 lines of flux, hangar bays in positions of launch pads and travel. Set tractions, right? So it's amazing how you formulate that in a 4-angle and screen, right? And then you change it again. Look at that setting. Okay, different level, different size of the structure of the building. So gets communication of this, and this, and platforms have communications, right? All right, so let's get in position lines of height travels, directing ground centers into the airplane. Process in that position, its tail, and its wings, and set lines of travel. Okay, so it wants to travel this way. Okay, remember it's connected to its Skynet, to its system, to its webbing. And then it crosses this way in setting. It goes this way in that position, and then it goes this way, but it stays on a laser grid. The plane stays in the atmosphere, it just goes to higher levels of volume, of massive communication. Right, so it goes in all different directions all at once, right? Structure of itself and set lines of communications, all through set position. Right, and then it goes through its portals, see? It's seating its arrangements to its portals of communication, right? All right, so it's very powerful. I understand what's really going on in tractions. Okay, see what happens with the car, how it comes in mass and volume. All right, so when we get an understanding how it comes in echo chambers, then we understand the facades, and the facades basically puts everything in location. Let's get into levels of screen and setting position. We start with that setting, right? Okay, all right, and then we split it 3 ways. Okay, and then we send an antenna and send it into 3 lines of flux. Okay, and then we go 2 lines of signals. There's the satellite. So aerodynamics and screen line, launching pad, docking 1. Okay, docking 1. Now you need a level. Level the signals, Pluto, and set position of door records of time sequence. Okay, and set tractions, right? So once you get in that position, it comes in this settings of volume, see? Volume at 2 centers of travel, right? And then you come into L tracks, 3 tracks, 4 tracks, and setting and position. Okay, very powerful stuff in set track locations. Okay, and you change the direct signal case to its system. All right. So remember, everything's always in the atmosphere. Nothing is landing. So when you get on that treadmill, guys, you have to understand the rotation of the spin. Okay, because the fabrics of the space. Let's start with the spectrum here. Part acceleration of 1 center, 1 surface, okay? And then we get a position here, and a position here, and here. Let's split it in 3 lines, right? Okay, that is your space. Okay, you are in the center, operating its setting. All right, so you get to calculate and modify your north, east, west, and south. So we got 4 lines of perimeter, and crossing angles, okay? Now, what you have to understand is the center operation of its system, and understand the spectrum of its torical fields, and all through operation system. Okay? And then you come into the grounds and set tractions, right? Now once you get into that, you come into the sonar interference, echo chambers, and taxi runways and travel. Now once you come into that, then you understand your clocking system comes into pi. It splits lines in pi in 4 lines of sectors, vectors, and quads and travel and set tractions. Now, the more you go higher, the more you come into the stargates. The stargates opens up the panels open up the screens, it opens up the windows, and line communicates and setting to its facades and tractions, right? And then we have time frame of communication, right? Inside through travel. Okay, very powerful stuff in setting. Okay, so I'm just showing you what goes on when you understand more levels and what's happening to your system, all through setting, and what an airplane does through travel. Right? So it goes through energy loops, and it goes through all line communication setting, right? And so let's get in 1 center, process of 2 angles and 3 centers of split lines of communications, right? And then we have central core centers and line communications of pylons. Setting 1 there, over cross line 2 angles, and line position another pylon there, and travel, right? So airplanes in positions, if it wants to change its angle, it changes its position, okay, of setting. So your plane's here in travel, and set tractions, right? So all it's doing is looping in its digital and locking screen in its clocking system of dimension. So it goes in this center, into the center operation system, and shifts into the center operation setting and process communication. Okay, that's what a plane does, right? It goes in its own portal. Now, as it's going through its own portal, it's fluxing through the 2 pylons in travel communications. right? So it goes to its own spherical sphere into its rotation of its black hole. And set position, location, and setting of its spectrum of light. Now, once it goes through its lights, it lines its screen's adaptation to its flux over setting. Yeah, look at that, disappeared. Okay, setting travel in that communication system. Powerful, isn't it? Right? And then it goes through its open windows of frames. Right? And as it goes into its entry points, it has its exits, it has its entry points. But what you understand, it also has its arrivals and departures. So the plane, basically, the position, location of its system is its dimensional layers, and 3 signals, and 3 grounds of surface and travel. Okay? So remember, a plane never lands, it's always in the atmospheres of its planes of communication. Okay, very powerful stuff. So I'm just trying to get you guys to understand. It's more complicated now because you're coming to more levels of your emotional system, of your facades. You basically, in that spectrum, you come into, let's get into the pi. Okay, circulation and rotation. You start with that, right? All right, so cutting the layers is like this. Okay, cutting the layers, okay, of a pi, right? And once you keep doing that, it comes to linear time of space of 3 centers. And the process of communication system crosses angles and 4 lines of flux in setting the travel. Okay, 4 over 3, right? And then we cross the angles, and then we have equilibrium that crosses line signal location setting of its spectrum. Line signals in position of fabric and space lines crossing angles of 45 communication system of travel. Okay, so we're cutting the layers of fabrics of space so you guys can get into higher communication of yourself interactions, right? And then we go through this platform, this platform, this platform, right? So it's all sequence. Oh, look at there. It's in position, right? And then we go to the different angle. Okay, so these are docking stations of hangar bays. Okay, each line center, okay, is its launch pad. 3 launch pads and set correlations to setting a travel. Okay, so when an airplane comes in, airplane's here, okay, setting sequence, right? That's the airplane, right? So the airplane comes here and rotates. So it looks like it's landing, but it's not. It's on a holographic dome. Okay, it's in a holographic dome in atmospheres of space. Sets communications from here and lands, right? So it lands. The doctor system, ego has landed, rendezvous, okay, in setting. So it lands, right? So that's where you basically, when you're seeing the atmospheres and you're seeing below, what you're seeing is the motherboard, right? Setting sequence, this is the motherboard, which is the cloud. You got 3 clouds of central settings and travel, okay? That's what you're seeing below, right? That's what you're seeing below, okay? When you're in that position. But you don't land, you don't actually land, okay? You land on an energetic dome, okay? So you're tethered to the grounds of powers and atmosphere through laser. And once you understand that, then you come to your high centers of travel, okay? But that's what goes on with a plane. Okay, so it gets more complicated when you come to the echoes and chambers and flights and manifest and communications settings, all through attractions, right? So now we come into all positional locations, how we get into those line settings, location of your system through anchor points, and understanding your portals and stargates, and understand how to control your emotional system when you come into that through your treadmill, right? So you're in that position here, okay, and you're trying to keep yourself grounded. You got to get in your mind control now. You got to control your behavioral settings, okay? Because that's what's coming into the 9 line settings, right? So, and if the connection of the Earth rotates this way, you got a mind control going this way of indication, right? As soon as you do mind control, you're going this way in set position, direct and redirect, right? So you don't control that, the Earth itself will then start controlling you and your speed and acceleration. So start taking over the body of its navigator to its navigations. That's what you got to get control of now. So you have to more control everything around your system now through consciousness. And the way you do that is to perceive locations of different facades. So that's how basically you control your emotional system when it comes to light metaphors. You know exactly what you're doing with the locations of travel, so you have a directed redirect signal. Sets position location here in setting. Okay? There's the pi, there's a generation screen, back to the same location as pi generation set position of travel. Okay? Split lines of 3 cycles, 4 centers, and 5 position. Okay? Set the tones, high operation sequence, location through setting, through travel. Appear and activates lines of 4 signals, ground centers the surface of travel communications. Alright? So it's about understanding how to get communications at grounds. Of what goes on, you know? So I'm trying to get you guys, I'm starting with the airplane because the airplane is always in the atmosphere. Okay, so this is the optical illusion that you have to understand. Now, you are here, right? But your body is here. It's always in the center. It's always in the center, okay? So what keeps you in consciousness is what you're doing through modifications of mode control. You're mode controlling your movements, right? So you think you're on the earth, but you're not. It's the gravitation that keeps you on the earth. And it's pull. It's a magnetic pull, a magnetic force in that position. So once you understand the attractions, you're basically getting in that position. You cut the wires. And when you cut the wires, you start to recognize where you are and set lines of communication. Right? So once you do that, you come to higher lines of screens. That comes into more lines of ramographs. You guys are in your evacs, you're in your volume, vast velocity. You're trying to understand how to control your perception, how you see things, and all through travel. So once you get in that positions, you automatically turn into your facades of face recognition. Starting in setting through 9, right? Sets all communication setting of all different levels of set position. Okay? And then when you go through the portals and stargates, you go through higher lines of communication. Right? So you travel through and set tractions, right? So you say goodbye to your earth, and it turns into all formation. Illumination, all through settings, cloak and dagger, and set tractions. Okay, so it starts to disappear. And then this starts to disappear. Okay, in setting. And then your face starts to disappear. And then you all disappear in setting traction. Right? Now you're actually where you are in the virtual reality of self. It's that modification. Right? So you never leave your center. Okay? You just have to understand that you're mutating into different levels of frequencies now. So once you understand that, then you understand your inventory, your traffic, your modems, your Wi-Fi, your satellites, and your towers. But once you start fading away, you start living in the existence and all formations of real time in set position. All through tractions, all through calculation. But you're still there, right? So once you get into that, you go to higher levels of consciousness. You kind of out of the subconscious, you come into the super consciousness, but you got to stay above water. It's important that you guys stay in position of 72,000 line, right? Because once you get into 144, okay, you guys will be equilibrium of balance of space and time. So the fabrics of space are just cutting the pieces of the pie. Sending sequence, blocking centers of 0 and travel. Okay? So mine's the center. Okay, so you start with that, right? And then you come into this, and then you come into this. And then you come into this, you start with that, and then you start with this. It's an interaction. Right? That's a clocking system right there. Okay? So once you get into that, so you got 4 quarters of 1 slice, 3 centers of travel. You got position locations into 1/4, into line position location settings, into all set line position location through systems. You get 1/3 line and position 1/2 line and settings into 2 screens in position of 3/4. 3 set lines equals lines of triangulation of flux and setting lines of travel. Right? This is a clock, right? Into modulation systems. So you have to understand how to use that through coordinates through your FAAs, all right? Flights, your communication, your assignments, location, your atmospheres. Directing ground centers is the center operation system, location system, keeps you in balance and core centers of your solar system, okay? Sending track centers. The operation line has set lines of geometric lines, geo lines of theriums, 4 line communications, right? Directing 4 centers and 45 angles, and 3 centers, and 3 centers in set and travel communications. All right? All right, so in that position, so this is your Earth, right here. Right? The Earth is a mirage. It's an optical illusion. It's there on standby. It can morph into anything that changes in cycle. But your position location is your center operation of you that never leaves the system, right? You just think you're on the Earth. You have to get out of that instead of travel. You're not on the Earth. You're always in the center of the Earth. And that is the Earth where it sets position of center operation and setting of sequence. And then you really understand you're on top of a pyramid, which means you're always on top of the stairs, which means you're always 12 steps ahead and 0 steps back. All through your clockings, all through your foundation system, right? So you've never been here. You've always been here in the center. Okay, so your Earth is in the center. And the mapping sequence coordinates its system of structure of design and set tractions. Okay, so let's just get in black and white. Setting panels, setting screens, application of surface. And traffic communications. And setting. Okay, that's your Earth. You're the center operation. You don't leave. You are the pivotal point. So what you do is you can remote control everything around your system of travel. Okay, it rotates. So your pixels, your activation streamlines, your solar panel communications. Your hip conception is the waist that controls everything of the mind. The mind controls everything that in its aspect of its environment. But you have to mind control the treadmill, or the treadmill will control the body. And the body doesn't have control of the treadmill. It's never going to be off in set position. But what you have to understand is the treadmill, you never get off a motorcycle. You never get off when you're in a car. You never get off a position location to anything attraction. So when you're sitting in that chair is on a treadmill. Okay, so that's how you got to get your grounds and mind control your systems, location setting of your Earth and travel communications. Okay, very powerful stuff in setting. Very, very powerful. Okay? You're always here in the center. So if you're in the center, you have to operate the system and mind control your settings now. That puts all lines of position, how you see the facades and how you see things around your system. You start to morph into that tractions. So let's get in a box frame again. And I'll show you exactly how this all works. All right, so let's get platforms of 3 centers of travel. Okay? Okay, this is you. Okay? That's you, right? Okay, so this is general. This is general. This is general. Everything at all angles is general. General is the actual structure of the building itself. I'm just the building itself. So I see you, you see me, right? But how you see me, you only see me through perception, how you want to see me. And that's connected to the subconscious. So when I touch down, okay, I'm this. I'm in no form, coming into form. Okay? I'm in no form. And then you see me, how you want to see me through perception, right? So we see you on 3 different angles. Okay? And then I morph into what you want to see. You know, copy and paste and travel communications. Voicing patterns of grids, right? Now you're seeing me how you want to see me. Right? So that's basically what it is. And that's where it comes into contact at the end, where there's no shape, no form. But when we have an eye contact, we need eye contact with you right away in angles of point communication. Right? Eye to eye, right? Sets provision here and set lines of tone over here. 3 centers of travel, open window, flux over or box, triangulation or circle. Triangulation, okay. Setting lines of square roots, set operation line sequence, line communication, Merkabah, tesseract, and tetrahedron. Okay? But that's exactly what it is, right? That's how this all works. We don't come into form. We don't come into shape, okay? Until we see you. And when we see you, we automatically connect to your lowest spectrum of your Earth. That's what it is. And basically, the team knows that too, because they have to be cautious in what they see now and what they say to themselves and how they want to see people. Because you're going to see the facades. You're going to see them through light. You're going to see it through dark now. Because you have to understand how to mind control your system. Because if you don't control your mind system, that treadmill is going to be controlling your body at a higher frequency. That's why you have to stay above 72,000 hard deck. You can't go below that. Okay, so it's about understanding how to process yourself and know exactly how to go through the subconscious of its mind. Balance in the communication system puts you all levels of travel. Okay? It high signals your systems and puts you in ground centers of surface. All right? So let's say in that positions that you're talking to somebody and all of a sudden you come into frame how you want to see how they look through this or through that, through here or through there in that position. Now it can be volume, it can be mass, you can see 2 different faces in one cycle, 4 different faces in one cycle. You have to be very cautious of what you're doing to yourself because your metaphysical body is becoming more of its facades, which is all levels of nothing but a dimensional being of light. So you have to be very careful of how you talk to yourself and how you talk to each other. And it's all done through mind control, right? So for example, again, the setting lines of travel, set position, location, measure, and scale, okay? The treadmill, right? So when you're on the treadmill, the connections of the grounds is spinning very, very fast. It's always spinning. It's always been existing of spinning. Right? So when you get on the treadmill, basically wherever you're doing, if you're on a position location of a chair itself, this is a chair. Okay, that's a chair, right? You're on the chair. Okay, you're on the chair, right? You have to control the gravitation of its grounds. You have to control your panels and set position. You have to control your powers of reposition. You have to control the atmospheres and highways of set tractions. Right? And remember, the treadmill is going extremely fast. So when you're controlling that, you have to understand how to direct and redirect your system in the same sequence, same panel, same operation of its continuous flow. So it's like getting into a spin cycle and trying to control that being on a chair. And once you understand that and you get mind control, you're traveling in set position of direction. Okay? So you're traveling here, you got control of what's going on with its spin acceleration system to its motional setting. That's what happens. You go from that, and then you go into your platforms and setting all through your galaxy systems, right? And then you go into positions. You can change different levels, different frequencies. You can be your avatar, you can be galactic unit, you can be transformer or travel, right? But you got to start here first. You can't just fly into an avatar and understand the treadmill, because the treadmill is trying to understand you, which is its consciousness. So wherever you're sitting, wherever you're doing, whatever you're in positions of, if you're eating or drinking, it's a process that try to understand what it's like to have a glass of water and you're on the treadmill spinning. Water will go all over the place. If you're trying to eat, food gets all over the place, right? So it's trying to control a blender and its speed and acceleration through Mach. So you have to mind control your system through your behavioral settings now. And this is all connected to your facades, right? Through your energy grids, your VAS, your volume, velocities, and your vacuums when you come in that positions of fabrics of space. So you have to get out of fabrics of space programming. And they come into your own fabrics of space, which is no space, no time, no provision, no cycles, no balance, no equilibrium, nothing. Then you start perceiving space. Okay, this is going to bring you to higher levels of the mind of empty space and how you see space. Okay, but you've got to get mind control of everything you get into the stuff. Your bodies are moving faster through space and time. So it's all about controlling everything that's on the treadmill, right? Again, set position lines of travel, showing exactly what's going on. Okay, the treadmill, right? Now, imagine your car is on the treadmill and it's already moving in set position, right? So you have to control the direction, because if you don't, you fall off the treadmill. Okay, you fall off the treadmill. Okay, so your body has no control of what it's doing through its mind, right? As soon as you get control, this is what happens in setting. It gets control, right? It's in control what it's doing through space and time. That's control, right? And then it comes into its highways, set lines of communication, its primer. And then it gets control of its direction for what it's doing through setting. And then it processes lines of panels of communication with the system, right? And then it gets totally control of what it's doing through its system, lines of position location of solar communications, right? And then it gets grounds at its surface and travel, okay? That's what it is. You stay in a 45 flux of different angles of 4 settings. Then you process the portals, the stargates, the wormholes, and all line communications of balance, the clocking system of facades, right? So it's a balancing act of center operation, right? It's like if your scale is off in sequence, okay? T-screen centers into all position. This is the all communication system. That's why you have your solar and your dimensional sail. That's a scale, right? What happens if it drops? Okay, this goes up. That's off balance. Okay, you see that, right? Too much on this side, right? So your grounds of your Earth rotation change the spin cycles of setting of your seconds, minutes, and hours, right? So, and it grounds the setting. So this is totally off in sequence. It's that position. You see how that's off? There's no connection here, right? So your body is here. Okay, your body is here. Your body's here, and your body's here, floating everywhere, out of sync, out of mind, out of position, out of conception of mind interpretation of inception itself. So that's what you got to get control with, is your dimensional and your solar scales. Balancing the systems of grounds and high lines of service. Process in position, process in tractions. There's the balance, right? And then you travel through the 45 angles and travel communications. This controls your platforms of equilibrium, the process calculation in your cerebral, location of settings. Okay? So that's all it is balance. Very powerful when you get in position with flywheel. Okay, but I'm just showing you how powerful it is when you're off track. This is what happens when you're not understanding how to go through a treadmill, how to control the treadmill. But you do it through the mind now. So basically, this is how you get in positions now. If you're here in setting, okay, and you understand what's going on, you're controlling everything at signal. Okay, so you're controlling the position of your car, right? You're moving the car by itself. It's moving in direction. So it's going this way, opposite directions. Not back in time, just the opposite directions, right? But you're also controlling it this way in set position, right? And then you control it this way, which is north in position locations, right? And then you control it downways in 3 lines of communications, right? And then you control it this way in set position location systems. So start with the past, present, future of line signals that puts you in the grounds of communication setting to its gravitation. 3 signals and setting lines of communication all through the car. That's control. And then you come into your webbing system of light and dark. Hooah. And it's all done through a box frame in travel communications. Okay, look what you can do through the car. Because now you're grounding the treadmill of the center operation of your system, right? But you're always doing it from above. Okay, you're always doing it from above. See, you're always above. Remember I told you guys have to stop looking at sequence lines of panels and process of communication system when you see the stairs? And realize, oh, so you're here in that position. You think you're at the bottom of the stairs, not recognizing you're already at the top. So you're already at the pie. So I'm just showing you on different angles, see? You're at the top, right? So you never ever think you're at the bottom of the stairs. Okay, that's the confusion part you have to get into. Getting out in sequence is the center operation of you and flux of all communication system off the clocking. Right? Is know exactly how to go around the spin in the center operation of its Fibonacci, where you can actually understand how to balance that in sequence and travel. How you go round and round and round and round, and then you go round and round and round again, right? So you're directing and redirecting, and you're opening up your facades of face recognition, right? And travel communications. There's your face. Okay? Okay? So you have to go in a constant continuous flow and 3 lines of flux over setting. Process 3 angles, 3 pi, right? So we've got 1/2 of pi, we got 2/3 of a pi, and we got 3/4 of a pi. Okay? Set lines in division. Sequence lines, panel screen, 0 lines, 1, sets position, time sequence. Sets position 1, subtract 1 equals lines of 0. Very complicated through formula. So, once you understand your altitudes and your graphs of communications and solar generation lines, you understand the center operation of the system of ground powers and atmosphere, 3 angles and travel communications. controlling the three angles of the setting, right? Center position, cross angles, process calculation with the platform. And you got earthline tones, draping down ground center locations, earthline rotation. And sending travel in that position at galaxy lines of anomaly, and to set track location setting in your grids and travel. Okay, 3 platforms, grounds, powers, and atmospheres. Right? So this is what it looks in set positions. Okay, so empty space, empty space, empty space, empty space. Okay, so empty space equals nothing, set position of 0. Okay, and the same thing. So that's north of no space, empty space. Okay, and then you got east, and then you got west. Right? West equals 0, east equals 0. Bring you guys down to one number, one traction, one division, one locations. Empty space equals 0 equals south. Okay? All right, so getting in that position locations, you ground your centers of your earth 1, 2, 3, and 4 lines of measure and scale. Okay? So, what's process of communicates percentage or angles of flux. Same as a 2 tractions and 4 line division location system, all through traction. And then you get in panel operation lines of 45 communications, right? But you ground your earth here. You ground your earth here at center, and you ground your earth here. Grounds, powers, and atmospheres, an extremely important setting, okay? And then you go through the platforms. 3 grounds, 3 centers, and 3 operations of your atmospheres in the space of time. Okay? And then you go the opposite direction signal. So you have to understand how to go through laser grids and travel. Okay? And when you can cross those angles, you're directing and redirecting which is coming one signal, one traction, one division, one locations. Right? And again, you do this, and then you cross over angles and position locate your system. Okay? So you're long streaming your system, your coordinates, right? But you have to understand how to connect to set locations, how you see a triangulation travel. Okay? Okay? This is not travel through triangulation. This is not travel through triangulation. Okay? This is travel through triangulations, going this way, in a 45 communication of flux. Now once you get into that, then you come into your phase facades that changes online sequence location system contraction. Okay? So you have to understand how to travel through triangulation and understand the portals and communication system all through traction. Okay, so we go through a flush line. That's a 9-line set, right? So lines of 9 sequence equals lines into frame. Frame communication lines of flux into Fibonacci setting of travel. Okay, now XT1000 comes in 2 platforms, striking 1 setting, process 3 over set traction. Solar screens, flux over line, graph communication setting, or solar track communication. And then we go in position location towards doors, right? We open up line screen adaptation of doors in sequence with 3 lines of measure and 4 lines of scale, okay? And then we open up the 0 ones in center, 3 centers, and 4 communications of settings of flux. And then we ground the shift, setting of course centers of galaxy shift lines of anomaly. Sets communication system all through travels in your pyramid in set position, okay? Then you come to the location grid, 4 flux lines of angles, 4 signal location system, crossing angles of point communication system all through structure, all division, your locations. Very complicated stuff, right? And then we go through high centers inside location setting, echo, and your taxi runway. Process of communication setting inside position location your map. There's your map inside the simulation. All right? There's the XT1000s inside, see? Now you bring it in, you can see the structure of design. Okay, now you can see the street. There's the street. Okay? So you bring it in, you bring it out, but there's the map. All right? There's the map of what you're connected to. All right, so we get an XT1000 platform here, mothership over here, and position location, connect the setting the travel. Okay? So that's it right there. Okay? That's its runway, that's its taxi runway. Okay, so it's all about seeing on the 4 different angles the structure of design. Okay, when you see that, you bring it in close, and then you see all position location system of the travel. Okay? So you get a close eye and how to see things in structure of design, how it's all set up in set position. All right? So that's when you start controlling your mind of your body, the mind starts controlling the body itself, right? So you come into the metaphysical world, and you process everything around you where you basically have no shape, no form of anything that you see until you touch down and when you see. And then basically it's understanding the controlling system, what you see through perception, how you want to see yourself, not how you see others, right? So that's very important to understand. What I'm trying to get you guys into is to understand that through flux, is to control everything that you're seeing through perception, because you can no longer travel through emotion, because it affects everything that you see in your facades and interactions. Okay? So hopefully that gets you guys grounded and know exactly how to put yourself in travel. This is going to help you in all that ways and forms. Okay? I will see you guys on Q&A.